In our business, turning capital, the velocity matters. Do I want to fight for 4 years to get 2 million and maybe there's a risk that something goes wrong? Or do I want to fight for 90 days more and get 1 million?
What's up, everybody? Mason McDonald here with another episode of the Big Picture Blueprint, where I had the pleasure of interviewing Logan Fulmer for the third time on our show. In today's episode, Logan and I discussed 3 different deals that we dive deep into: a 5-figure deal, a 6-figure deal, and a 7-figure deal. And if you are interested in learning more about how to do deals just like the ones that we discuss on the show, make sure to buy your tickets now to Logan's Distressed Property Acquisition Summit that is occurring January 31st, 2026 in Scottsdale, Arizona. You can attend online, you can go in person. Make sure to visit the link in the show notes to be able to go buy your ticket. But without further ado, let's bring Logan in for the show. Logan Fulmer, welcome back to the show, man.
Three-peat. They say 3 times the charm.
Yeah, three-peat. So, besides my mom, I know at least one person will get value from this show for the third time having you here. And it's just me today. Dan's pretending to work and, flying out here to Colorado to look at a subdivision. But the way I kind of wanted to frame this show is distressed property acquisition, which is what you specialize in. Asset class agnostic. Go back and listen to our first show with Logan to really dive deep into that. But there's differing levels of entry and barriers to entry to this. And so I think we're going to talk about a 5-figure deal, a 6-figure deal, and a 7-figure deal on this one. So, Logan, let's get started at the basics. What's just a really, in terms of DPA, 5-figure deal that you've done recently? What did that one look like? What's the acquisition?
The first thing I'm going to say is the price point is not necessarily indicative of the complexity. That's important because sometimes people say, oh, it's a simple one. It's a 5-figure deal. Well, it doesn't always work like that because when we get to a very large one, I'll tell you that. So, but I will tell you a lesson we learned. We started doing these on small vacant properties because it was simple. And if we messed up, it was very small amounts of money. And we were testing this business model. This is a decade ago. And I learned that your risk is only as great as the money you have into it. So naturally that made me be more careful, but I was completely just blindsided. I'd gotten used to this doing it in San Antonio on these $50,000 and $100,000 properties, buying them for $5 or $10,000, fixing the title problems and reselling them. And I'd rather deal with lawyers and surveyors and title companies than I would contractors all day.
Dude, I mean, you're just got a surprise like $60,000 bill for a retaining wall. And meanwhile, I picked up 17 lots, didn't get title insurance on half of them. I'm making like $400,000. And I'm like,
come on.
Why would I ever deal with contractors ever again whenever I can go do this without thinking about it? Because all real estate ends up being a pain in the ass. And so why not, 4 or 5x your return on it?
That's right. So what I found is I was doing those deals here, making great money. And someone called me from a different big MSA in the state. And I went and did a deal up there and the vacant lots were worth $500,000 instead of $100,000. It was the same work, actually the same cost. I made on that deal was like $470,000. And I'm used to making like $50,000, $80,000 a piece back then. And immediately I was like, oh, let's do bigger markets. So it's really important to start with that frame because people understand it already. So, all right, let's talk about the first one.
Oh yeah. Sweet. So tell us the story. Where is the property and who was the seller?
So we're going to talk, this was downtown large MSA, Texas. I say that because in my mind, all large MSAs behave very similarly. You have laws that differ across states, and we only understood the laws were similar to Texas. But now we've got deals all over the United States, and we find, I say rural, large MSA, semi-rural, county, ETJ, whatever. So that's why it's important. But we start there. I had a guy who, his sister owned the property. She got married to a man who came here from Mexico. She was helping him get his citizenship. They were friendly, but I don't know the true nature of that relationship other than the citizenship part was important. There's a house on the property. The house burned down. Oh, I'm sorry. He came, got married. She bought the property she bought the property after they got married. And then he ran back to Mexico quickly after that. So technically it would be community property. Well, he was gone. She passed away and her brother inherited it. It was a very small tax.
Okay. And is brother in the States?
Yeah, brother's in the States, but husband is down in Mexico. So we're trying to figure out what to do.
Well, time out. How did this come into your pipeline?
So this was early on. I wasn't quite as sophisticated, but the very easy answer for me is pick a big MSA and then pick like Redfin or Zillow and do the solds and the listings. So you can see them both, the green ones and the blue ones at the same time. And just look for the area with deltas and sales prices. So if you look in a stabilized neighborhood like the one I live in, all the prices are very consistent. So you don't want to go there. You want to go where you see like $100,000 listings and $400,000 listings. The reason is you see unimproved and improved properties. So when you click on the low price ones, either a vacant lot or it's a crummy house. When you click on the expensive ones, it's all fresh and flipped. So what that means, it's a transitional area. That's a great place to go. I did understand that point, which is how we find a good market within 3 minutes on Redfin now. But that's what I was doing. I was very familiar with the east side of that city. And I was just going around looking at vacant lots and literally pulling up my phone, typing in the address manually to the tax office and say, do they owe taxes or not? And then I would put in the owner's name and type in obituary after it. And are they alive or dead? That was it.
I love the simplicity of it because I think people have a tendency to complicate whatever their, market selection strategy is. I see that so often in all the different communities that are out there of how do I even pick a market? And it's like, well, you broke it down in 5 minutes of how you pick a market. So you get this lead in your pipeline. You're talking to the family member. What's the conversation look like?
Yeah, he basically is like, well, I don't know. I don't really care. I mean, I'm not going to give it away. But yeah, my response to him is, look, it's, I don't know really what's going to work out of this. You can't fix it all. Here's what I'm going to do to fix it. Anyway, he was stuck. We went back and forth. He wouldn't negotiate with me. So I came back a few months. He told me he was going to go get a loan, build a house on it, make money on it, do all this stuff. I'm like, have you ever got a construction loan before? And he's like, no. I'm like, you ever build a house? I'm like, okay, I'll call you in a month. Dancing like that for several months. I knew no one else was going to fix it. So we finally come to an agreement. I think I pay him somewhere like $10,000. That's our contract value. But I go get a title report run, and ultimately the deceased gal and her husband show up on title. Well, I know I can get her off title with an affidavit of heirship to the brother. That's simple. But this remaining spouse guy, that's a mess. So this is one of the early deals where I learned a lot. So I called a local lawyer and said, let me come to your office, turn the clock on, I'll pay you by the hour. And I got a lot of questions. And we spent the afternoon, like I'm asking questions. He's looking it up, give me an answer, doesn't have an answer, call local judge, call local attorney. And we come to this like brainstorming idea that he doesn't think will work, but I say, well, I'm willing to pay to try it. And we find this thing in the family code after we talk to a family law judge. And he says, there's an abandonment of marriage. You usually have to get a judicial order for that. But why don't we try to do an affidavit and prove up the facts? And then we're like, well, who's going to sign it? And so I call this guy and ask him, who's around, who knows your sister? And he starts naming friends. Well, I have the marriage certificate because it's part of the deal. And I see the witness to the marriage is her best friend, which is one of the names he mentioned. I said, let's call her. She was literally the witness to the marriage. And I was like, where is this guy? He went to Mexico. He abandoned the marriage a week or two after the marriage, and he's never come back. And I'm like, whoa. So we look at the statute, and the abandonment, his behavior matched the abandonment statute. We just didn't have a judge's order. And I thought, let's just whip up an affidavit that outlines the abandonment statute. She testifies to it all in writing. Let's file in the land records and go to the title company and ask if it'll fly. The lawyer said, I'd never seen anything like this work. That was the first time it worked.
So for the witness, how did you convince her to, help you out in this capacity? Was there payment involved, or was she just?
You can't pay affiance. Like that's a thing. So I remember just talking to her and saying, look, I'm trying to buy this thing from your old best friend, and her brother is the one that inherits it now. And we just don't know what to do. If you could help us, we can probably solve it. If you can't, I just don't know at this point if we're going to be able to solve it. And that was nice. I didn't demand anything of her. I said, well, if you would help, I would love it. If you wouldn't, I'm probably pretty screwed, but please.
Yeah. Well, and that right there is like, depending on who the people are, as soon as you start using some of this language, which the language you used, just, telling the story back, was really simple, really kind, really friendly. If you start talking a bunch of legal jargon and family law stuff and this, that, and the other thing, it can really scare people. So you pay $10,000 to the guy, to the brother for the property. I imagine you had some legal fees associated with this one. Do you happen to remember how much, give or take, you spend in legal?
I don't. I mean, we did that exercise with the attorneys 2 or 3 times. I mean, it couldn't have cost me more than $5,000 probably. So the interesting part is I thought the value was more. This was younger in my career. I was just learning. I didn't know what I didn't know. Thought the value was more. I didn't think I was going to spend all that money in legal fees. So when it was all said and done, that became, basically a 5-figure check. I think I made like $10,000 or something out of it. And that was one of the smaller deals. So I would call that a bad deal. There's probably not more than 20 deals in my entire career that I made less than $20,000, $15,000 on. So on that one, I completely shit the bed in my mind.
But you learned a lot, and this is why, and I know you've since expanded into more markets, but understanding Texas and having attorneys in Texas and understanding the code makes it so where whenever you see something similar to this, because no deal is going to be perfectly unique. You're going to be able to apply it to a 6-figure deal, which I feel like is a good segue into a 6-figure deal. So let's go into that story of pick anyone from 100,000 to 999,000. Let's say you at least doubled your money on.
Okay. The first thing before I get into that, I'm going to interject here. You made a good point. I'm going to elaborate on that. This is not about solving that problem. It's about putting together a framework to solve problems, because we've been in this a decade now. I mean, we have 25 people in the office, 3 attorneys here, private investigative, a genealogist. Like, we have some just complete ballers in here. Every problem that comes our way, if we want to solve it, we solve it today. There's not an unsolvable problem if it's economically feasible. But what we have is a framework, and asking why, asking what if, asking how about that, continuing to dig and ask and try. That is the framework that you've really got to get figured out. And there's probably not more than 10 different types of deals. These days I could categorize every deal you could throw at me, the thousands of types, in about 10 different categories probably. And as you start to understand those categories, you say, I got it. And some people never graduate to those 10, but I got more people coming through our program or coaching program than you can imagine that learn how to do 2 or 3. That's the low hanging fruit. And that's all they do. And they don't have to learn the mega complicated stuff because they don't want to, but they're making 5, 6, 7, 800,000 bucks a year doing 20 deals a year, have a much easier business to run with 1 or 2 people in their office. And it's a lifestyle company. That's what big margins and low spends do. Anyway.
No. Well, and let's expand on that a little bit more, because, when you start adding more people, there's more complexity in the organization. If you don't have the SOPs built out and the framework set, then, everything's going to get lost. And so whenever a deal comes into your pipeline, what does that look like? What is your operations flow of who handles it first? And do they see the deal all the way through from start to finish? Or whenever you have these genealogists, freaking FBI directors, or whoever else you have on your team, attorneys and everything, how does that work?
We're a very flat organization, and we have people that usually take the deal from cradle to the grave. Mostly they find the deal, they solve the deal, they acquire it, they solve it. And when it becomes time to sell, then it goes into, my wife's a agent and another friend of mine here. It goes into their basket and they sell it. But at that point, all the technical is done. It's just marketing time. So we have a lot of small little clusters, and 1 or 2 guys will take it from start to finish with a little bit of partner oversight.
Okay. Got it. Awesome. All right. 6-figure deal.
Now we move up in the price point, and this is extreme complexity, but the next one we go even up in the price point higher, and we go down complexity. So I don't want folks to say, oh, when you move up in price, it's complicated. No. We were willing to take the complicated one here because it had a lot of value. So this was an industrial tract of land. It was about to be foreclosed on for tax debt. It had a $400,000 tax bill. It was worth about $1 million. And the owner had been in bankruptcy. This dude was a professional jester, dude. The guy had been in bankruptcy for like 10 years.
It's a lifestyle business you at.
I've never heard lifestyle applied to bankruptcy, but that's the dude. So he'd been a developer it was the West Coast and in Texas. And apparently he had a bustling business, did really well for a long time. And I think as he aged, some things went wrong. He filed his bankruptcy. He was somehow able to keep it going for 10 years. Well, that's why it was like literally 10 or 15 years. And this particular tract, the appraisal district value was a couple $100,000. And he was working through the big assets and getting sick and doing all this stuff. And as the value climbed, the appraisal district didn't value that. And it was a hot MSA. So the value was climbing. Appraisal district didn't catch it. It was the last vacant lot in a industrial complex. So it's like an industrial subdivision. Lots of value. Everybody wants the darn thing. No one can figure it out. Well, there was a big mess of deeds. The guy was bouncing it around through entities, through bankruptcies, through trustee services. It was a wreck. And we came across it and realized there was like 10 days till the sale. And we started looking at it. And originally it came across my desk because of complexity. And I looked at the value in the appraisal district and I'm like, dude, don't waste your time. The $400,000 tax bill, $250 assessed, forget it. Well, they didn't forget it. I'm glad they did. Well, they didn't. They went back and started looking at the data and said, no, dude, I think this is worth $1 million. So I said, all right, if it's worth $1 million, let's talk. So through the bankruptcies, the trustee, let's see how this, God, I have to remember the man was filing bankruptcy and the beneficiary of the trust was an entity that had filed bankruptcy, but the trustee was not bankrupt. It was some lawyer who was holding some of these assets. And as they were going through the bankruptcy process, they included some of these assets. But the bankruptcy closed, and for some reason, they didn't deal with a couple of these assets. I still really don't know why. But the title company had a big problem. They said, you need to go back and open up the bankruptcy, recognize these, see what kind of workout they want to do, and then bring it out. There was a lot of complexity involved here, but as we were realizing that, we said, hold on, let's go talk to the seller. So we go back to the seller and say, look, would you take $25,000? 23,000, I think was the number. 25, 20s. The guy's lawyer says, we'll take anything because we know what's wrong and all. So we give the guy a contract for 20-ish thousand. And I say, look, I'll give you 3,000 today as a down payment and let's close. And then it's an installment sale. So I owe you the balance of the money. There's 25,000. We gave him 3,000 down. We owed him 22 or 23,000. That's what it was. We'll give you the balance within 6 months or when we close. And if we don't, you just get to keep the down payment or the first installment. He said, done. So we signed it all up. At this point, there's like a week left to the sale. Now a neighbor calls because we find that there's a mistake in the tax lawsuit because they didn't do proper notice. So we don't want to pay 400,000 because it's a big chunk with risk involved and we have the title risk. So we call a tax office and say, guys, y'all have some exposure here because you didn't do proper service. You serve the bankruptcy trustee, not the trustee of the trust. This is bad service, and we can get this tax sale deed set aside if you mess this up. If you let the sale go through and they're like, oh, crud. Okay, fine. We'll set the sale aside. So we know we have 5 or 6 months of time now. So your risks are usually money, time, and then, your solution in this business. So we solved the money problem, kind of. We solved the time problem, kind of. Now we got to solve the problem with title. Well, at that point, we started to make a pretty good business case for this. And we realized the trustee was not the bankrupt entity. It was the underlying asset or the underlying entity that was the beneficiary of the trust. So we call title back and say, hey, trustee of this trust was never bankrupt. He was never in bankruptcy. He was never brought through the bankruptcy, and we also noticed we thought these assets were through the trust. Now that I'm recalling, or through the bankruptcy. Now that I'm recalling this one was not listed in the bankruptcy, but his entity that was a beneficiary was. We go back to the title company and tell them not a bankrupt trustee, bankrupt entity. They said since title was in the trustee's name, they would accept it and insure title. So the last wrinkle of this is we're like, boom, we got it. We're going to wire 400 grand, pay the taxes off. Oh, wait a second. We have time. Let's get our title commitment updated. And we start calling. Oh, that's what it was. When we got the tax sale pulled, it showed cancel on the tax website. The neighbor called the tax office and said, what's going on? I was ready to buy this. They said, well, some company's involved and they got deeds. The neighbor who owns a manufacturing plant calls us and says, that's my property. I'm like, oh, I got a deed. You don't. Let's talk. Mm-hmm. He said, it was supposed to be mine. I said, why is that? I said, well, it's mine. So let's talk. Anyway, here's what happened. he expected it was going to tax sale because he'd been watching it. He wants to expand his plant. He'd been working with the city to make sure they would allow the type of expansion he wanted and a modification of the zoning. And he had like an oral agreement with them to adjust the development agreement, all kinds of stuff, or get a development agreement to adjust those things, get variances. He was all ready to go. He just wanted to go to the sale and pay for it. And he couldn't. So we go back to him. And at this point, one of the other guys on the team is getting appraisals from brokers we're paying for now. 1.5 million is what our appraisal is coming back at. So we go to the guy and say, hey, appraisal is 1.5. He says, it was going to sell for 400 grand. I say, well, it's not. If you want to buy it from us, you can. If you want to go to the market, you can. If not, you're going to have to go buy a site down the street. And now your site is spread out. That's not our problem. It's how the world works. I'm really sorry, but I have no interest in giving you a discount. Like, you wouldn't do it to me. I'm not going to do it to you. I respect that, please. He comes back and says, I'll give you $1 million. So now I'm like, all right, you know what happens when you take a bigger priced asset to market? It's commercial. It's unimproved. Our market's kind of wacky. My grandpa always used to say, a bird in the hand's worth two in the bush.
I was about to say that.
So in this case, maybe we wouldn't have gotten the 1.5 at market. Plus you'd have to pay broker fees, which would have been, 80 grand, 90 grand. So now it's not 1.5, it's 1.4. Let's say you don't get your price. Now it's 1.2 or 1.1. We're already right there.
And then carrying costs, opportunity costs, everything else.
And my business could use the cash. It always needs cash for a new deal.
Oh yeah. So on this, there's a lot to
Hold on. Let me give you the last part. Here's the last part.
Keep going.
So we tell the guy, all right, show me proof of funds. Do you have the $1 million? He shows it to us. I say, we'll do it if we close in 10 days. So we closed in 10 days and our settlement statement was $1 million minus the 400 grand to the tax office. Plus there's some post-judgment taxes. Plus we had legal fees. We walked with a check for $409,000. Oh, and we had to pay the remainder to the seller.
The 22
sale. We walked away from the closing and we only had $7,000 out of pocket to get in the deal. We walked away with a $409,000 check. 18 days.
Oh my God. Wow. All right. That's a crazy one. So let's try and simplify what technical skills someone would need to be able to even take a look at something like that. Because was all of this, like, I mean, you're looking through bankruptcy court documents, you're looking, or is this all on the title commitment or title report, abstract of title? Like, is all of that information that you're talking about mapping out this like crazy, who's in bankruptcy, who's, the beneficiary of this? Yeah, exactly. If you were to break that down into like a technical skill set that people could go and practice and work on.
There are two things. So the title company gives you a good overview in the beginning. They give you your starting point. There are bankruptcies here. There are entities that have problems. This man is involved. They give you all that. There are two things you learn. You need to learn how to use the deed records and the docket searches. If you're in real estate and don't know how to do that, that's a bad answer. You do need to know how to do it. I don't care what kind of organization you have set up and what kind of process and systems. Those are two things that are very critical to use.
Have you run into specific cities or counties where that stuff is not readily available online? And if so, how do you?
We try not to work in those counties unless it's just something really big and special, because you have to go like an old school landman and go down to the courthouse, pull out those big old books. It's a real pain. We like working from the office. Air conditioning is nice. Gym clothes are good.
Oh yeah. No. And I think that right there is important to recognize. Of so easy to get shiny object syndrome. And while there are, opportunities in far out rural counties where I'm sure some of this is applicable, you have to think about the end buyer. Where just like in this situation where you're in a major metro, it's industrial land, which is super attractive. Right now and forevermore, industrial land's always going to be attractive. Going and attempting to do this in, Western Kansas or something like that might not be super applicable. And was it you, Logan, that's like looking through all these documents, or is this attorneys that are looking?
No, that's our office. So we do have attorneys. They do a lot of the doc prep because we're not attorneys. If we do that, that's called barristering in most jurisdictions. It's illegal to practice law and you don't have a license. So we don't do that. But we get them to fact check. We get them to look up stuff that's harder for us or takes longer. They already know it. But in this case, it sounds really complicated. But remember when I went back to saying, asking why, asking what's going on, asking how come, asking what's next, ask what if this. Going through the deed records, you can pull up all the deeds recorded to this place. and you just lay them out down the hallway. I just posted a video last week of like 40 deeds we all had out. We just lay them out, go write it up on the board and say this deed to that deed to that deed, and put dates and names. And then you go into the bankruptcy case and you start from the beginning. Johnny filed bankruptcy, brought these assets, and you'd be shocked. People look at all these documents, they're intimidated. You want to know what to do? Read the damn things. They're words, dude. They tell you all the stuff you need to know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what a title company does. And I mean, you're just figuring it out, which is pretty cool. And I love to where I think, mindset wise, people would hear, I have to pay off a $400,000 tax bill, which did you negotiate that down at all? Or did you just get more time okay, got it. Because I think, and this won't be the next story, but have you negotiated tax bills down before?
I've negotiated tax bills and been unsuccessful. So the way the process, I've heard people say they can get them. I've yet to see it, and I've tried it a lot. We finally stopped doing it. This is the process. We had one of them where we were really going to run hard at it, did for a while. It wasted too much time. So you deal with the tax law firm, which represents the county. The county is actually an aggregation of the stakeholders. So you've got like the roads and bridge department, the county, the school district, the city, the police department, the fire department, all that. Those are all the stakeholders. So when you look at your tax bill, it's got like 7 or 8 lines. Those are the tax jurisdictions. The city does not have or the county tax office doesn't have the ability to negotiate on behalf of each one of them. So if you go and negotiate with each one of them, sometimes you have a shot at it, but you have 7 stakeholder meetings. Some will say yes, some will say no. What's the economic benefit? I would really go to another deal and find one that makes more sense on its face.
And just to reiterate where you found this one, you were just looking at tax sales.
Yep.
Is that correct?
We look at mortgage foreclosures, tax foreclosures, judgment and lien filings, like creditor type stuff. We look at lawsuits filed against people and businesses. All of those are the best lead sources.
Fantastic. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, that's a fun one right there and a really good story too. But let's move on to even bigger. 7-figure. Tell me the story.
I've got 2 of them, and I'm going to pick the bigger one. Well, they're actually both about the same. All right. This one just happened recently. This one had delinquency as well, and we noticed it was owned by, now I'll just preface, because this one went to some really nasty litigation with a multinational white shoe law firm that sued me individually, tried to wrap all the companies in, and we still got what we wanted. But I'll be really clear. I was not involved in this until the lawsuit was filed. So all the things I'm telling you, when I say we or I, what I mean is my team. And then I found out later when we got to go to depositions, the details. So this is how I know them all. There was an estate that had problems because all the family members had agreed and signed off waivers and allowed one of the brothers to be the executor of the estate of the deceased parent's will. So he was in charge of all this stuff. He just didn't care about it. Things weren't working out. He wasn't paying the taxes. He didn't settle the estate. He didn't sell the real estate and pay people off. None of that. He opened probate and walked away. And we didn't know the probate existed. We missed that. That was a mess on our part. But we saw in the appraisal district it was worth $400,000, $500,000. And we get a hold of a couple of the owners that would be the heirs at law. So if there's no will, the intestate succession chart would say these 3 people were owners. So we were paying them $30,000 a piece, ripping checks, getting deeds, and they were working with our attorney to do affidavit of heirships. Well, after we'd written 2 $30,000 checks, we stumbled across the probate. We're like, oh, crud, we just paid $60,000. Well, we talked to the administrator. We pull the entire probate file and we realize he has the unrestricted right to sell. The will said he could. He had a bond. He had letters of testamentary. So we go to him and say, well, $130,000 is the price. We already paid $60,000. We'll give you, I think we gave him the balance or $130,000 total. I can't remember. We rip him a check and get a deed. I mean, an administrator's deed for 100% of the property. So I think we're in it for like, it was either $130,000 or $200,000, somewhere out there. We still think it's worth $400,000 or $500,000, so we're going to do good. We send a trash out company to haul the trash out, and someone shows up and said, what are you doing with my property? Oh. So that is a beneficiary of the estate who says, well, we didn't know we sold it. And our trash out company guy was mostly done with the trash out. And he's like, where's all my stuff? I had all these valuables. This house had been vacant for 7 years. So then we get a demand letter from a large firm that says, bring the stuff back. Here's a list of the items. Give the deed back. So We go back to him and say, no, according to, this is the estates code. Is it the estates code or the probate code? I can't remember now. If the administrator's estate is insolvent or needs capital and has to satisfy debts, he has the ability to liquidate property or liquidate assets. And what they mean is sell it for less than it's worth to satisfy debts. The property is in foreclosure, about to be lost. He had the right to do this. So they didn't like our answer, although we thought we were right. We get a lawsuit next couple of weeks. And about this time, we do a survey of the market and realize it's not worth 400, 500 grand, it's worth $1 million. So now I want to fight more. I got a bigger legal budget. They file the lawsuit. We come back and basically respond. And at this point, the deal would have been done. If they didn't file the lawsuit, we'd have sold it for $1 million, had a couple $100,000 in cost, and made 800 grand. Instead, they come back and file pleadings and say, this is a bad transaction. It should be set aside. The administrator's in cahoots with you. Y'all committed fraud. These are usually all throwaway claims, but they name me individually. They name the companies, wanted to wrap all of the entities in our office together that are unrelated. It's a scare tactic. But we get through some discovery and they realize none of that stuff is true. And then we file a summary pleading in response, and we think we destroy their claim, basically. They don't respond to that, but they come back and say, we'd like to settle with you. And they were the aggressors. They hired a big firm. They were just barking as loud as they could, and they come back and settle. Well, at that time, they produced an appraisal the estate had done that we'd never seen, that appraised the property for $2.3 million. And I'm like, the next time it's worth $10 million. Let's keep going. I thought we were going to make 300 or 400 grand, maybe 200 grand. I don't know. Then once we realized the value is better, we thought we were going to make a little less than $1 million. Well, now that we realize the value is so big, I say, I can split the baby with these idiots and still make what we thought we were going to make in the litigation and get paid quicker. In our business, turning capital, the velocity matters. Do I want to fight for 4 years to get 2 million? Or do I, and maybe there's a risk that something goes wrong, or do I want to fight for 90 days more and get 1 million?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without question. So what did the ending price?
So we split the baby. We settled. I made them. So they were giving me a bunch of house on. I said, look, all these claims you had were throwaways. I want you to non-suit those separately, because I want someone who ever researches this to see this and know that those claims failed and you had to non-suit them. And then we filed our joint, global settlement. And they said, no. Finally, I said, well, fuck it then. I back off. Let's just go back to discovery. This is not right. Then they came back and said, we'll do it this way, but not this way. And I was like, that's fine. I want to take out the confidentiality and non-disparagement, non-disclosure, because I want to talk about this on the internet, you idiots. And they agreed. So we split the baby in the middle. So we're going to sell the property right now. We take half the proceeds. They take half the proceeds. We each pay our own legal. We'll probably pocket 800 to $1 million, maybe.
There we go.
Now the litigation complicated that one, but we've done deals just like that didn't have the lit part, and we moved right through them quickly. That one is fresh. It was fun.
So with that one, we talked at the beginning of the show about creating frameworks around these different deals that you're doing. What framework did your office create around this deal to look for potentially similar ones, maybe without litigation?
You can't look for them without lit because you don't know. It's just a flip of a coin. One, if you do these and they're low priced, you can get through 100 of them, 200 of them with no real legal claims. When you're talking about $500,000 to multi-millions, you start getting more claims because it becomes more worth it to people. So you have to remember, as you climb up the price spectrum, there's more lit risk. But also when you're making that kind of money, you say, we only spent like 50 or 80 grand on legal for that. I anticipate we spend $250,000.
And that makes sense right there. I want to help people try to understand, because I think one of the most dangerous assumptions that people make in real estate in general is making assumptions about what's going through any seller's mind. Whoever was selling this property that had the legal right and this appraisal of over 2 million, where's the disconnect there?
Mason, I've been trying to figure this out for 10 years and I stopped. The best analogy that I give, and Sheik laughs because he hears this probably more times than anybody. He loves music. He's studio manager here. He loves music. That's like, he plays it. He attends it. It's part of his core. I don't care about music. I listen to Katy Perry and my kids on the way to school, and I turn it off when they're gone. I could care less. There are people that feel the same way about money and property, finance, and economics. They just don't care. So the way Sheik can't understand how I don't love music, I can't understand how those people don't care about finance, and they can't understand why I do. People have problems in life. They could care less. If this didn't exist, pawn shops wouldn't happen. People wouldn't take in valuable things and sell for 10 cents on the dollar to a pawn shop. It's just part of the economic landscape, and it's part of human nature. So I stopped trying to solve it. But what I did learn is you don't even have to know what that person looks like. If you ask enough people that are in kind of a similar situation, the probability of one of them saying yes more often is greater. So go look for those kind of situations. That's your framework.
Yeah, which is fantastic advice. I think, people have a tendency to shoot at the wall and, just kind of see what sticks. And what I'm envious about, and I'm capable of free will, so I can change my business or whatever if I wanted to. But is like there's a very specific property that I'm looking for. It's like a minimum of half a section from Huerfano County to Goshen County, Colorado to Goshen County, Wyoming, with decent county road frontage and electric within a mile at a certain price per acre. And that's all it is. And there's only so many of those that exist. But the deals you're talking about, it doesn't matter what asset class it is. And when I say it doesn't matter what asset class it is, it could be anything. I mean, it could be jewelry to real property to anything in between.
We've got claims right now to stock portfolios and cash accounts that came with this stuff that we're making claims against. Anything.
Oh, I mean, you can do this in the film industry.
Yeah.
You can do, I mean, there's so many, it's everything. And it doesn't necessarily matter what state you're in. I mean, whether you're in New York or California or Texas, there's a lot of people that can figure this out. And that's what's so exciting about your business model. And I feel like these three stories illustrated several different points, but still kept the theme together of, building the framework for distressed property acquisition. And as we kind of move towards the end of the show, I think you've got an event coming up pretty soon. What's going on?
I try very hard to use the word training because people think of event and it's a bunch of hype people. Each one's selling you a bunch of stuff. We didn't want to do it like that, although it's in the format of an event. It's 8 hours. It's a full day. There are hour-long presentations by all the folks in my office that do different things, and it's a full education. So when people walk out of there, they're like, wow, I've learned how to understand what a lead is, look for those leads in the land records or the dockets, understand the acquisition model. I now know seller psychology. We have someone that talks about that, so you know how to call and have a script to make an offer to people, because that's a big sticking point for people in real estate is the script and the offer. We also have one of our other partners that does deal structuring. I talk about dispo, and then I talk about running a business. Like, that's something that I got pretty good at, I thought, because he's a ton of common sense. And if you do that, it's actually can be easy and not such a bear to hack. So, and we also have Brad Lee coming. He's going to join us and speak for a little while, which would be like really cool. Him and Carlos. So we have Carlos Reyes coming for our VIP day, and Brad's going to speak on the general admission day. We do not let outsiders participate because this is training, but we have those guys because they're awesome.
Which, when
January 31st, there are two options. If you want to come live, it's in Scottsdale, and we also have a live stream. So the ticket works for either one. Buy the ticket now, pick what you want to get. But I'm proud of it. I value people's time and their money, and I would never bring something to market that I don't think is worth multiples of what they're given. And that's what our testimonials look like. So we're really, really excited.
Oh, yeah. And the link to purchase the tickets to the DPA Summit is going to be in the show notes on all platforms that this has been released on. But before we wrap things up, you mentioned you're going to be talking a little bit about running a business. I think what I've seen so often is people hearing part of this episode of you talking about making 10 grand or 20 grand with a super complex deal, and it being the same thing as, making 100 grand or $1 million or something like that and applying it in the same capacity. And it's the same thing with business ownership of, why have one employee when you can have 20 employees? And, 10X is either easier than 1X, or, kind of that philosophy. But do you think 10, 15 years ago, when you were first getting started in, call it the real estate business, that if you put yourself then in your shoes now, you would be capable of operating this business how you do today? Or do you think it was the last decade that has given you the bumps and bruises and scars and just knowledge to actually be able to?
Yeah, I needed the experience. At the time, I didn't have it. I'm 44 today. Back then, I was, early 30s. So I just needed to grow up. I needed to have some good stuff happen and some bad stuff happen. At this point, it's really more about people and finance than it is anything. Back then, it was all technical. Today, I don't have a ton of new technical things that happen to me or with us. There are technical things that happen in the guys that are direct at the project level, but technical's gone out of my life. It's finance and people.
Which soft skills are much harder than technical skills. You could go to a one-day summit and learn a lot of what you need to learn to be able to go apply this to your business. But the only thing that puts you in the position, you can read all the business books and leadership books in the world and everything like that, but actually getting the experience. And I think there is something to having the technical knowledge to be able to then effectively lead people. Because I say this, I was 26 years old running a hospital, which no one should have put me in charge of a hospital at that age. But you got to where you are today from all of the history. You're an overnight success, a decade in the making, right? And I think that a lot of people will hear the first part of the show and be like, I'm just going to jump into 7-figure deals and have a 25-person team with a 7-figure payroll. And you're not, and don't let that let you down. Do the first deal before you worry about it.
The good news about this kind of work is I never tell people burn the boat. Some people do. It's their ideology. Great. It's not mine. I worked my job until this was enough to like really be there. When I got laid off, I started doing this stuff. There are guys. So I've got shares of all the companies that I've helped build that do this. And that's where my income comes from today. They ask me questions sometimes, but they run it. You've got one guy operating, doing deals by himself. That's a lifestyle business. The guy makes a bunch of money every year. He's knocking at the 7-figure door almost every single year. That's just one dude, or maybe one guy and one other person. But then you go on the other end of the spectrum. Our largest operation only has 6 people in it, but they have a $20 million pipeline right now. So what I like about that is you can just ease your way in. And I talked to a guy actually yesterday when I called him. We were calling people last night about our event. And he said, yes, I'm coming. I went to your event last year. I went and did 3 deals and replaced my income by 3 times. And I just quit my job because I have 3 years worth of income. I'm going to make this my career. And I'm like, dude, I don't know how to say it any better than you just did. One deal can be that good. There's another guy named Andrew who's local here. He's like, Logan, I don't want to be worth 20, 30, 40, $50 million. I want to make $500,000 a year, and I want to work part-time, and I want to do all the other stuff, work on cars and play with my family. He went to our coaching program. That's exactly what he does now. He won't even come to our event in January because he's like, dude, we're going to be in Hawaii with my wife. I'm not working January. I'm like, you know what? I'll take
That
it.
right
If
there.
you give me a testimonial like that, I'll take it.
There we go. Well, and that's what's so powerful about this business is that after hundreds and hundreds of deals that I've done myself, I've learned that like I say no to most things now because I have deals that are sitting in my inventory that I'm like, I shouldn't have taken them. Best case scenario, I break even now. And now, I pick up, and this episode will come out, in a few weeks after this one's released, but 17 lot portfolio. It's a little bit of a pain in the ass, but it's like, that'll make me $400,000 throughout the year. And it's just one deal. And that right there, and I'm solving title issues. I'm doing all the stuff that you talk about. And that right there is so much easier than having to do a million deals. But the only reason I'm able to identify a deal like that for what it is because of all of the legwork that I did before. So, get your scrapes, cut your teeth, go to Logan's event. It's going to be worth it. It is not just a hype fest where you're going to go feeling amazing. You're going to be studying your notes. You're going to be applying it to your business, and it's going to be awesome. And Scottsdale in January, it's better than Colorado. So,
I told somebody this on the phone the other day, and I'm like, I like the way that sounds because I believe it. If somebody comes to our event, it's the same price as the cost of a night out in town or a pair of boots. If you come to our event and you don't think that you got enough information to improve your next negotiation or one deal or enough to make a big business change, if you don't think you got any of that, call me the following Monday, give me a Zoom and tell me to my face that, and I'll give you every dollar you gave me back. And not many people will make that guarantee about an event.
And I guarantee you, for everyone listening, this for the value for what you're spending for an event like that. There's nothing like it. There truly isn't. I hope you make at least a little bit of money or break even on throwing an event like this, Logan, because the value that you are creating for the cost that you're spending is incredible. But any last nuggets of wisdom you want to leave the audience?
A really important thing for people to understand is don't be intimidated by this. I was a Wolffield guy, and not a whole lot was adding up for me other than just having a good job at this point after I gotten clean and sober and just kind of got it all together. And I figured out how to get myself how to making 2 or 3 times what my good oil field job did. Within 5 years, I could make $1,000,000, and there was no roadmap. Today, there's a roadmap for people. I built it by myself with these 2 things, and a bunch of guys in my office helped. And I don't know. I mean, you don't have to go to med school. You don't have to go to law school. Like, this is it. When I finally stumbled across this, I'm like, dang it, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. Here it is. And it exists. So please take that and do something with it. Please. I did. Worked.
It does. And just because we're talking about it on podcast does not mean it's too late. So
No.
there's opportunity nationwide for you to get involved in this. And that's what's exciting about it. Pick it, go learn it, apply it to your business, and make a ton of money. But Logan, it was a pleasure. The first 3P on the Big Picture Blueprint. There we go, man. Well, this is Mason McDonald. Dan Haberkost is with us in spirit, and Logan Fulmer with the Big Picture Blueprint, signing off.